Morning glory, everybody. Dwayne Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt on the final day of Hugh's vacation. He will be back on Monday, unless, of course, he jumps off the boat, swims to shore, finds the nearest airport, and gets here before the end of the show, which, knowing the desire for Hugh to be behind the microphone is strong enough, it may just happen. But until then, I'm here to bring you the news. And man, what a day this has turned out to be. Last 24 hours has been one of the more remarkable 24 hours of my 30-year professional broadcast career, and I've seen a lot of things. Joining us in a little while will be Matt Continetti, Ben Domenech, Eli Lake will be especially interesting to hear from today. We will be talking to Jim Garrity after the break. Let me give you the update on what is going on internationally in the last 24 hours, in case you've been living somewhere other than reality, like the Democratic Party is. Israel launched a massive wave of attacks inside Iran to decapitate the regime and take away their command and control and go after the nuclear program. Why? Earlier in the day on Wednesday, the International Atomic Energy Agency found that Iran was not in compliance with weapons inspection and reporting of where their nuclear program was. The estimates were that Israeli intelligence said they had enough active weaponized radioactive material to put together at least 9 atomic weapons. And it's not that they just had the capacity. They were actually in the assembly stage of putting together the nuclear weapons. They already had the cones. They had the detonators. They were assembling the bombs as we speak. And Israel said, we cannot wait another moment. And they didn't. The president of the United States, Donald Trump, came out and was on X this morning saying, I gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest of words to just do it, but no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. I told them it would be much worse than anything they know, anticipated, or were told, that the United States makes the best and most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world, by far, and that Israel has a lot of it, with much more to come, and they know how to use it. Certain Iranian hardliners spoke bravely, but they didn't know what was about to happen. They are all dead now, and it will only get worse. There has already been great death and destruction, but there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next planned attacks already being planned, being more brutal. There's a chance to make this come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire. No more death, no more destruction. Just do it before it's too late. God bless you all, Donald Trump. Followed up by a few moments later, 2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have perhaps a second chance. Donald Trump hopped on the phone with Dana Bash of CNN earlier, and she said, well, are you still going to try to negotiate? And Donald Trump said, there's nobody left to negotiate with. They're all dead. And she said, killed by Israel? And Donald Trump said, well, they didn't die of COVID. That was quite fascinating. Let's hear what so we'll talk about the initial raid and how successful it was. Better than anybody even could possibly imagine. But the breaking news just within the last 40 minutes is Iran was able to summon up and follow up a 100-drone return volley that went nowhere. All 100 drones were shot down, many of them over Saudi Arabia, by the way. But they followed it up with 2 different volleys of ballistic missiles by the dozens. There were Patriot batteries and Iron Dome batteries flying everywhere, and at least one, it looks like, at least one missile has gotten through. I want to give you the viewpoint of Trey Yinks at Fox News. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, this was pretty wild to watch, prepping for the show half an hour ago. Let's play cut 1.
An indication, and I can see interceptors coming off from all directions. We don't know exactly how many missiles have been fired by the Iranians, but this is Israel's second largest city, a population of 300,000 people. And right now they are headed, and you're seeing an interception right there, up to the sky, Yaniv. Just stay with us. We just need to be calculated here. We're good here, and we are going to, okay, so right now what we are seeing, Sandra, is Israel's missile defense systems, likely along with American systems, working to intercept incoming ballistic missile fire. This is the attack that the Israeli Army warned about. We spoke with officials before we started this live report, and they said they actually had to cut short a statement by Israel's top spokesman because they got some information that this attack was about to be underway. These sirens that you hear off in the distance, again, are used to warn the population to get into shelters. And we're just going to wait and see what information we can gather about this. And we have a statement right now, Sandra, from the IDF, and I'm just going to read it to you in real time. A short while ago, sirens sounded in several areas across Israel following the identification of missiles from Iran toward the state of Israel. The public is asked to follow the instructions of the Home Front Command. At this time, the Israeli Air Force is operating to intercept and strike where necessary to eliminate the threat. It's essential to continue following the instructions of the Home Front Command. And so, again, the Israelis are operating in real time not only to strike the missile launching positions inside of Iran, but also to shoot down any of that fire. And they will use the defense systems on the ground, but also fighter jets if there are any sort of drones that are flying toward Israel to try to distract the air defense systems. But it gives you a sense. Okay, and I'm going to have my cameraman go back to the skyline here, and you're going to see.
We're watching on the Salem News Channel. Here's where it got really hairy.
The Iranians are targeting major population centers in Israel, again, in response to the operation overnight that took out a number of IRGC officials. And we can see flashes in the skies over Tel Aviv. Just pull out of this shot here a little bit, Yaniv, and I'm just going to talk to my cameraman while we're talking here. So there are some interceptors. There are interceptors coming in off the sea, and you're going to see some in the distant skyline. There's a missile, and it is headed down. So some of this I can already see, John and Sandra, is not being intercepted. We just saw one of the missiles. Okay, and there's an interception right over Tel Aviv. Pull out here, Yaniv, and you're going to see the trail. Just listen here. Okay, this is some short-range systems.
Imagine this being in your city,
Stay
where you're
here,
living.
Yaniv. Pull out a little bit. Okay, there's just a massive amount of fire coming to Tel Aviv right now. Yaniv, get ready to pull it off the sticks. Get off the sticks. All right, let's go. Time to go. Okay.
And if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, that is where it looks like at least one of the ballistic missiles got through. Now, we don't know. We don't have confirmation that it was a direct strike with hundreds of missiles and Patriot batteries that are converging on them, and there's debris and intercepts going on everywhere. It could be shrapnel from one of it, or several of them that caused some of the damage. The Israelis are reporting that their first responders are responding to at least 7 different locations all throughout Israel to see if there is any collateral damage or personnel damage, damage to people. Most people are underground in shelters, as they should be. But the war is on, and the war is going to continue until Iran is no longer a threat. And make no mistake, the U.S. is taking a side in this, and they're taking the right side. At least most people in the U.S. are. We'll tell you who aren't as the show progresses. Wayne Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt, who I believe right now is being restrained from diving off the ship in pursuit of swimming to the nearest airport to try and get back sooner. I am joined by Jim Garrity of National Review. Jim, it's been a heck of a day at sea, as they say. As we were laying this down, we saw the response from Iran an initial round of 100 missiles inbound. Most of them got intercepted by presumably Iron Dome. I don't know how much American help was involved. Probably some. It's not confirmed yet. At least one looks like it got through and struck the heart and downtown of Tel Aviv. There have been two subsequent missile volleys coming in. Haven't seen any that are hit, but we're hearing reports now that first responders are responding to 7 different possible sites looking for any potential casualties or injuries. This may be from direct missile strikes. It may just be collateral damage from shrapnel of intercepted missiles. Jim Garrity, give me your thoughts as we're watching the Middle East at war.
Yeah, stunning footage right before we started taping, and probably by the time people hear this, they'll be seeing even more of it. I think last night we all felt elated, or at least a sense of great satisfaction that the Iranian nuclear program was going to be dealt, hopefully, what amounted to a fatal blow. If not that, then a serious setback to the program. Sounds like the Mossad had managed to kill quite a few high-level Iranian nuclear scientists, quite a few high-level Iranian military officials, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps officials. But we knew the response was going to come at some point. And apparently the initial response was like 100 drone strikes last night. According to the IDF, next to nothing significant amount to that. This footage, what we're seeing right now, mostly recorded from downtown Tel Aviv, but I suspect we're seeing the same thing probably all over Israel. It's a lot of ballistic missiles coming in. Thankfully, Iron Dome is knocking down most of them. But each time you miss one, the consequences of the ground could be very serious. Sure. Now, everybody in Israel has been told, stay near a shelter and get near one the moment you hear an air raid siren or some other alert comes up on your phone or something. So hopefully the human casualties will be minimal. But I kind of feel like this, we knew the Iranians were going to retaliate in some way. This is one of their ways of retaliating. I think the other one that probably has everyone in the U.S. defense community on edge is the sense that Iran loves to work through terrorist proxies. Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Houthis. And of course, they've openly said they consider us to be responsible for this, even though the fact that we were not directly involved in the attacks from yesterday.
But up till now, Jim Garrity, the Houthis have signaled that they're kind of sitting on the sidelines for now. And Hezbollah seems to be sitting on the sidelines for now, which I find kind of interesting.
Well, there are a lot fewer Houthis and Hezbollah around than there were a few months ago, Dwayne. That they, it's a rebuilding year, as our football teams are fond of saying. The sense of they're not,
the proxies. So the proxies are the New York Jets of terrorist groups. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the Jets were striking last night. The good Jets, the very best Jets, considering the air defense systems, I guess I got to give a shout out to the Patriots as well.
Okay, so let's talk about what we saw last night when Israel got the green light and launched this attack. This plan was 8 months in the making, maybe a little bit longer. Certainly had to be coordinated with Donald Trump. Now, Israel, if you were to draw up, if you're drawing up the battle plan, if you're the Israeli commander drawing up the battle plan, Jim Garrity, and you had your best possible scenario estimates for the first battery, the first wave, could you have imagined anything better than what we saw?
It's tough to imagine. Now, I was saying the damage to Natanz looked like it had been hammered. I heard some people saying, well, they didn't necessarily hit the sites that were deep underground. Israel doesn't have the bunker buster, bomb technology that we do. They may have to strike some sites more than once. I just want to point out about, last night, the initial statement from the U.S. government put out by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and acting National Security Advisor, and the half dozen other jobs that he's got the acting capacity for. Was very much just emphasizing the U.S. was not involved in this attack and that Iran should not retaliate at U.S. sites. And I remember, I think it was some commentator on CNN who was saying there was no statement of support for Israel. Isn't this surprising? Isn't this, kind of shocking? By the time Trump gets on the phone this morning and he puts out a statement on Truth Social, he's very pro-Israel. And he's very much saying clear to the Iranians, yes, I warned you. I went back and I checked. There was a statement from February where Donald Trump had said, or I guess end of March, where he says, if you don't have a deal, you're going to have bombs like you've never seen before. Well, fact check, true. That was very clear. And the true President Trump was very clear in his statement.
And good for him for doing so, right?
No, absolutely. This is the the carrot and the stick. This is the offer. But by the way, and he sent Witkoff, which I am less than fully confident in. If you're the Iranians, this is the best deal you're ever going to get. You're never going to get an American president who is more interested in reaching a deal and being called a peacemaker in the Middle East more than Donald Trump is. And so they, deal. I was starting to hear very ominous things about allowing the Iranians to continue enriching uranium on sites as long as it was for peaceful purposes. Wink, wink.
Right.
And apparently that, like, in my mind, that's a borderline dangerously generous offer from the American government. And apparently the Iranians didn't want to do it. The Ayatollah thought, no, that's not a good enough offer. And they thought they could string these negotiations out forever. Well, guess what? 60 days means 60 days. Now, Trump is saying, if you want to reach a deal, we could still talk. But remember, the consequences of not signing on to a deal now are probably abundantly clear to the mullahs in Tehran.
Well, and if there was any doubt of what the Iranians thought of the president's peace offering, sending 150 ballistic missiles inbound on Tel Aviv is not exactly the way to signal that you are, open to discussing that further. So Israel gets full marks in my book for the precision for how they did this. And in phase one, going after the personnel, the generals and the nuclear scientists. Phase two, adopting the Ukrainian model of importing into Iran a bunch of drones, smuggling in drones to be able to launch from inside Iran to be able to take out, command and control structures. Phase 3 and Phase 4 going after Natanz and other nuclear sites. Apparently, Isfahan has been attacked this morning. So they get full marks. But one of the reasons why it was such a smashing success in my book is because Donald Trump played the perfect deke. He fooled the Iranians to think that we're going to send Witkoff to negotiate one more time. We've got another week that we can string this along. We have nothing to worry about. When Donald Trump, I think all the way along, was creating a fake handoff play.
Yeah. Dwayne, when you mentioned the use of drones on Iranian, the Israelis deploying drones onto Iranian soil and then striking them from very close to the air bases, I'm just picturing the Ukrainians being that gif of Leonardo DiCaprio from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Hey, that's our trick. That's our guy. That's our thing.
I know.
We're doing our thing.
I know.
Did we patent that? Can we sue for copyright?
Warfare has changed, and boy, are we going to have a discussion here in the future about letting the Chi-Coms have all the farmland around sensitive sites here. We're going to have to do something about that. Jim Garrity, National Review, great writing on X. Follow him at Jim Garrity and at National Review. Marching my way through the murderer's row of pundits on a Friday here on the Hugh Hewitt Show, joined by Matt Continetti of the Free Beacon, the Free Press, of Commentary Magazine, a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Matt, great to see you from the Stasi bunker inside the American Enterprise Institute. Just a quick news digest. I'm going to turn the floor over to you for commentary. The latest news is a third wave of missiles have come and gone now in Tel Aviv and central Israel. Each successive wave of missiles that have come in have been with decreasing frequency and numbers and decreasing effectiveness wave by wave, which is a good sign, as Jack Keane said on Fox News. We're also hearing confirmed that at least 2 U.S. Navy destroyers in the region, including the Arleigh Burke, have been responsible for shooting down dozens of these missiles that have been inbound. Matt Continetti, your comments on the last, 36 hours, 24 hours? We knew this was coming, right? We knew this had to happen.
We knew it had to happen. I confess I wasn't sure it would happen, Dwayne. I think I fell for the operation the same way that the Iranian general staff fell for the operation. The belief that There was going to be another round of diplomatic talks this weekend between the U.S. and Iran, and ultimately Trump would pull Netanyahu back from the brink. It turns out that was a fatal error on the part of the Iranian general staff, wiped out in the opening salvo of this extraordinary attack by the state of Israel on Iran's nuclear and missile programs. And I think the fact that Iran targeted the missile sites first, after eliminating the command and control, is very important, because as you say, these waves of retaliation, these ballistic missiles and drones being launched from Iran, seem to be weakening with each successive wave.
Yes.
And that is very important, because right now Israel maintains air superiority. They have command of the skies over Iran. And that has allowed the Israeli Air Force to launch attacks against missile sites, against technological sites that are important to the Iranian nuclear program, and of course the nuclear sites as well. And I would just say one other thing. This is the opening. It's less than 24 hours after the first signs of the attack began flooding social media. And everything I hear from Prime Minister Netanyahu, from President Trump, from experts in the region, Israeli and American, is that this is going to go on for some time, and it will have to go on if the Israelis are to be successful in rolling back the Iranian nuclear infrastructure to the point where Iran's capacity to build a nuclear weapon is eliminated.
There's so much to unpack, and I'm glad I've got you for a couple segments here. There's so many parts of this to unwind here. You mentioned Donald Trump's his decoy maneuver. So is he going to get credit in D.C. and Manhattan, or are they going to try to spin this as, well, Donald Trump, some diplomat he is, nobody in the world respects him anymore. He can't even control Benjamin Netanyahu. Is the media complex going to recognize that Donald Trump actually pulled this off and had a pivotal role in the success of the early launch here?
Well, we know that the folks on MSNBC will never give credit to Trump for anything. But I think more important than the media reaction, Dwayne, is whether this mission achieves its objectives. It's critically important for the future of the region and the world that Iran not obtain a nuclear weapon. And Donald Trump has been consistent on this issue for a decade. And I have to say, if you paid attention to Donald Trump since his second inaugural, you would see that he has been clear throughout these past months. He has said Iran can do this the easy way, or it can do this the hard way.
But it's going to be done.
It's nuclear, right? Or it's good. He can give up its nuclear enrichment peacefully, or there will be an attack. And he said, look, we might not lead the attack, but we'll let Israel take care of it. That's what's happening right now.
Peacefully or viciously, I think was his famous way of expressing it, but it's going to be removed. The threat is going to be removed. We're going to come back with Matt Continetti. There's so much more to talk about, including how the left, how Democrats are already reacting to the war in the Middle East. Some of it you will just shake your head. Rejoined by Matt Continetti of the American Enterprise Institute. And Matt, look, the election in 24 was really not that close. It really wasn't. But 500,000 votes split between 3 or 4 swing states. And this guy, the modern day, the equivalent of Seoul City Sue, the Chinese equivalent, is now saying that China is the moral compass for the world. I don't even know where to begin with this party, Matt. What do you make of that? This was about 90 minutes before the rocket started raining over Tel Aviv.
Well, we can begin with the fact that Tim Walz is a moron. I think most people.
Okay, well, that's a good place to start.
During the campaign, You get the sense from his answer, he's clueless. There was one consistent belief throughout his career, even before politics, and that is a softness toward communist China. I think it's one reason why many voters were suspicious of him and didn't want to see him in the vice presidential residence. And thank God he's not there right now. But, I think we've seen from many Democrats this sense that Israel's actions were escalatory, that the diplomacy needed to be given more time. And I just say, more time for what? Everyone understood that the Ayatollah was playing for time. In the past week, the UN nuclear agency, the IAEA, said that Iran was enriching toward dangerous levels and then pronounced Iran in violation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Out of compliance.
So they're out of compliance. And we know that they were hiding. Plus, they began, as President Trump said, to become more aggressive, even announcing in the day prior to Israel's Operation Lion Rising that they were going to create another secret enrichment facility, even more heavily fortified than the Fordow facility, which is buried inside a mountain. So Israel had ample reason to launch this strike. And it's a blow for world peace that Israel is launching. Iran is the greatest sponsor of terror in the world. Its proxies were behind the October 7th attack. Iran and its proxies have kidnapped and murdered Americans since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. And so I think President Trump is absolutely right to say that he supports Israel, to say that this opening salvo in the campaign has been excellent, and to order our U.S. destroyers in the region to help Iran bring down these Iranian ballistic missiles before that they can destroy civilian lives in population centers. By the way, Dwayne, just looking at the images coming from Israel as it repels these ballistic missile attacks from Iran is justification for what Israel is doing. Because imagine that one of those missiles that got through had a nuclear warhead. That's why this is an existential issue for the state of Israel, our historic ally with such close ties between the two countries. And it's why President Trump is absolutely right to say that Iran had its chance, could still come to what I think is so fascinating about Donald Trump is, Dwayne, you know this, he's still offering an olive branch to the Iranians. In his statements, he's saying, look, if you want to do this peacefully, we can do it peacefully. But of course, the Ayatollah Khamenei and the mullahs and what's left of the Iranian military structure, they don't want to do it peacefully. They want the bomb, and now they're going to fight not just for the bomb, but for the very existence of this revolutionary terrorist regime.
So you're absolutely right about Donald Trump's sincerity and consistency on this issue. He this morning had a couple of different Truth Social regimes to that effect, saying, "I gave them a chance. They still have a chance. They could get there right now if they would just take yes for an answer." But that was before the rockets and the missiles, the three volleys, started marching their way towards Israel and Tel Aviv. And so was that the answer to Donald Trump? Meaning, is Donald Trump going to take what Iran did today as their answer to his olive leaf? And if so, do you expect U.S. action, bunker busters and whatever else, to go after Fordo? And do you expect us to ramp up our activities in the next week because of this? Or where do you see this going over the next week? Try to project a little bit.
Sure. Well, I see Israel continuing its operations, and I believe that those operations will have mounting success. And I think the more successful Israel is, the more the United States may see the opportunity here to help Israel in finishing the job against the Iranian nuclear infrastructure. But I also know this about Donald Trump. He does not want to get involved in other foreign wars. That has been a consistent principle in his career. Yep. And it has been the correct principle for his political longevity. Americans do not want new wars. So the biggest mistake Iran could make right now is to target U.S. assets in the region, to kill an American. When Iranian proxies killed Americans in the end of 2019, that's when Trump took out the head of the IRGC, Qasem Soleimani.
Yep.
If Iran or the Houthis target or the militias in Iraq kill an American, that won't be the end of the Iranian nuclear program. It will be the end of the Ayatollah Khomeini. So the choice is Iran's. It still is.
About 30 seconds left. How much sleep do you think Khamenei got last night, and how much sleep do you think he's going to get over the next week?
Well, I don't know where he is. Whether I'm sure it's in as secure a location as they might find. But Dwayne, one lesson of the past year in the Middle East is that no location is secure in Iran.
That's right.
Israel has so deeply penetrated the Iranian system that I would always be looking over my shoulder if I were anywhere close to the Iranian government.
Matt Continetti of the American Enterprise Institute, Free Beacon, and the Free Press. Follow him at Continetti on Twitter X. Lots of great commentary there, and at Commentary Magazine. I promise Hugh is returning eventually from this Hillsdale College cruise. He will actually return in hour 3 of the program today. Dr. Larry Arnn and Hugh will have another edition of the Hillsdale Dialogue. But Hugh's cruise is just about ready to get to port, I think, wherever they landed. And he'll be on his way back home and back behind the saddle here on Monday. And I cannot wait to hear what he has to say about all the breaking events. But while we're watching in real time what's going on between Israel and Iran, another skirmish has broken out amongst us in the Salem Radio Network and Salem News Channel family. I got an email this morning from one Mike Gallagher, who does the mornings on Salem. And he noted that in the Angel Tree campaign that all of us are doing, and by the way, you can go to HughHewitt.com and go to the top of the website and you'll see that Angel Tree banner. We've been telling you about all the great work Angel Tree does and how we really want you to partner with us in helping send children of parents that are incarcerated to summer camp and give them a chance at life, right? I'll give you details in a second. But Mike Gallagher noted that going into today, we were only one sponsorship short for our goal for the month. We were supposed to send 260 kids. We were at 259. And Mike Gallagher says, on the air, he says, I'll dig into my pocket and I'll donate with my own money and I will sponsor the 260 kid in Hugh's name so that Hugh's team can make their goal. And while I know what you're saying, well, wasn't that a sweet gesture, Mike? I'm telling you, this aggression will not stand. I sent an email back to everybody within Salem saying, on behalf of the entire Hugh Hewitt team here, this aggression will not stand. We will fight back at this open hostility and this open mockery. My audience, of which are legion as well as there are with Ed Morrissey and Kurt Schlichter and Mark Davis when he hosts, this audience will have at least 10 people that sponsor a kid to camp in Mike Gallagher's name just to show him we don't need his pity here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. All you have to do is go to 888-206-2764, 888-206-2764, or go to the top of the Hugh Hewitt Show page and sponsor a kid and get even with Mike Gallagher, and I would be extremely appreciative. Let's check the markets very quickly. The markets do not like war. The market dropped quite a bit, 800 points on the Dow. The precious metals are up quite a bit. Gold, I think, rose $50. Oil had one of its biggest all-time surges. If you want to know if now's the time to get into the gold game because of the war going on, check out AmericanFederal.com. AmericanFederal.com. Call Nick Grovich and his team. Or you can call 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694, or better yet, go to AmericanFederal.com. I'm joined by Ben Domenech of The Spectator, the editor-at-large there, Fox News contributor and host of the Big Ben podcast. And Ben Domenech, you're younger than I am. A lot of people are, but you're younger than I am. And for the first time in a long time, I am just green with jealousy because you're of the vintage now where in 2 or 3 decades you're going to be kind of where I am, or just a little older than I am, still got plenty of chance for sentience. You can look back upon this period of time and realize and appreciate how momentous of a time of in the world this was, and how great for conservative pundits it was. Ben Domenech, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. What do you make of this?
Well, that's very, very kind of you to say, because it supposes current sentience on my part, which is, with a 4 and 2-year-old, is a dubious distinction on a daily basis. But look, I will tell you this: Hugh missed out, because this was definitely a monumental week, and I think there's so much that has happened that has been prefaced by our conversations. And one of the things that I think is really interesting that's going on in the undercurrent. Obviously, people can see kind of the explicit storyline, but the implicit storyline here, I think, is one about the nature of Donald Trump and how he has changed from his first term to his second. What we've seen is that the nature of this presidency is fundamentally different than the nature of his last presidency. And I believe that is proven in the depth of reporting that we have now about the conversations that were happening behind the scenes, about the way that it seems very clear the Iranian regime was rope-a-doped into this scenario, where they were led to believe that something was on the impending side of potentially a deal that was never truly as close as they might have believed it. And that's something that shows the levels of sophistication and knowledge about the way that politics works, and the way that international politics works in particular, that shows this is an old dog who can learn new tricks.
Yes.
And that's something that I think is really, truly, impressive, in part because the assumption, I believe, about Donald Trump has been that he is unchangeable, that he is just the way that he is. And look, you could base that on a lot of different things, which is that, fundamentally he seems like the same guy you saw on TV, ages ago, that, he has a lot of the same impulses, he has a lot of the same weaknesses and strengths. But I think that also the situation here is one where if you could zoom out from that, 2020 sort of loss and the situation that he was in then to now, you would not believe he had the capacity for the kind of statesmanship that we saw going on this past several weeks. And especially, I think, we would not have the wherewithal to note that he, as he said to Dana Bash, as he pointed out to her, he says, I gave them a 60-day warning. I gave them a 60-day warning. This is day 61. That is not the old Trump. That is someone different. And that's someone who's learned. And that's interesting to me on a fundamental level in terms of understanding his presidency.
That is certainly not Barack Obama drawing a red line and then going nowhere near it. That's
exactly.
Not
it's the total reverse. It is not a movable line. It is, and that to me, again, is something where he says this stuff. He says these things explicitly, and yet over and over again, I feel like the people who are in Washington, in the Acela corridor, and in the media just ignore it, even though he's saying things that are very blunt and very clear. And I think that he was very clearly signaling this for a long time, and he actually acted on it this week, or at least allowed Israel to act on it. And we were supportive to degrees that I'm sure that we will know in the coming days. But it's something that is a significant departure from what I think a lot of people believed about him.
Let's we'll stay on Trump, but let's turn to what Israel was able to pull off in their first wave of attacks. And there's going to be ongoing waves. This is going to be a multi-day, multi-week operation that Israel conducts. I mean, just the fact that, let alone the fact that I'm seeing an Israeli jet refuel in midair over Syria. Did you ever think, Ben Domenech, did you ever think that you'd see that in your lifetime?
Certainly not. I mean, that's something that obviously had to be. I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but that's something that has to have been negotiated behind the scenes to make sure that was not going to be something that was interfered with. That's very dangerous, obviously. And if you haven't, by the way, for your listeners, if you have not seen the footage, please look it up on X. It's
remarkable. It's just remarkable.
Yeah. But it shows the degree to which, look, the Israelis may have a hand tied behind their back when it comes to so many different aspects. Their level of population, the limits of their resources, the fact that they picked the one area of the Middle East that doesn't have oil.
Right.
Like there are all these sorts of things. And yet when it comes to things like this, when it comes to projects like this, the degree to which they can plan, they can work, and they can solve the problem through sheer dedicated stubbornness and brilliance in the field is unmatched in the world today. And I think that we have to give that credit, because it is just what they've pulled off here is, you can war game this 100 times and 95 times out of 100 you're going to fail.
Right. But when you come at this like the Israelis do, of 80 years of being potentially exterminated tomorrow, it tends to focus the mind more than most people in the Middle East. But I guess what I want to ask you, I've given up hope on media, our chosen profession. Media is just a lost enterprise. I have given up on the Democrats as being a serious enterprise. We'll cover that as the next couple segments progress. I've even mostly given up on a lot of the never-Trumpers, although even some of the never-Trumpers are looking at what Donald Trump did, and they've got to kind of give him his props, because what Trump pulled off here, it's pretty impressive.
They have to give Hitler his due now. What weaklings?
Well, I know, right? But I guess my question to you, Ben Domenech, is how is Israel gets full marks? I mean full marks for the audacious nature of what they were able to pull off, and the execution and the precision. It's just a thing of beauty all the way around. I mean, as I talked to Jim Garrity earlier, when they basically adopted the Ukrainian play inside Russia, inside Iran, the Leo DiCaprio thing, pointing, sitting in the TV going, hey, wait, we did that. That was us. That was us. So the question is how is history going to view Donald Trump's role in doing the rope-a-dope, in doing the deke play, to get the Iranians to think that they had another week, they had another couple of weeks, so they didn't move all their assets and people around, and they were sitting ducks.
I think this is, look, the thing that was actually on my mind today, and it's something that I kind of want to maybe dig into on my own podcast this next week, is we kind of forget how much criticism Ronald Reagan got at the time about Reykjavik from the right.
Yes.
Meaning William F. Buckley and many other people thought that he was either selling us out, or that he was going to put us in a position that was negative, that he was not standing up to the Russians the way that they wanted him to.
It was a big defeat. They thought it was, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That it was a significant misstep. In fact, of course, Reagan was correct in his judgment. He was right. And one of the things that we should have some humility about, and I myself, try to adopt this attitude as a commentator, is to say, you're not in the room. You don't know what the conversations are actually like. We try to analyze them as best that we can, and we try to rely on those sources that we have to assess them. But it's statesmen who are in the room, and in this case, Donald Trump was in the room.
Now, who is the voice in the world that can negotiate some type of agreement in this? Who holds the moral authority? Who holds the ability to do that? Because we are not seen as a neutral actor. And we maybe never were. I don't want to tell anybody that. I think there's a lot of people that say you always leaned one way in this. But I think there was at least an attempt to be somewhat of the arbitrator in this. We saw President Carter do it with Begin and Sadat. We've had certain wins along the way that were actually mutually beneficial both ways. Now I ask who that is. And I mean, consistently over and over again, we're going to have to face the reality. It might be the Chinese.
90 minutes before the missiles started flying over the skies of Tel Aviv, the vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party just 7.5 months ago said that the Communist Chinese Party, the CCP, is the moral compass for the world. I'm joined by Ben Domenech of The Spectator, conservative pundit at the Spectator, host of the Big Ben podcast. You see him on Fox News all the time. He is a person on the right, but Ben Domenech, my gracious, what has happened to the Democratic Party?
Well, it's interesting that you highlighted that. Tim Walz said that for context at the Center for American Progress.
Yes.
Where he was being hosted by Neera Tanden.
Yes.
In fact, I don't blame me, but I sent an intern to cover that for the Spectator because I did not personally want to go into the bowels of hell.
Are you paying him hazard pay?
I honestly, I probably do owe her hazard pay, and she has covered it for us at the Spectator today. But one of the things that I would say about this is we look at the Democratic Party today, and we see the degree to which they are leaderless. They have no one who really actually speaks for the people who are at their base and the people who represent their overall ideology as it comes to the world. And one of the reasons for that is because the people who do have, I think, a great degree of political intelligence, and I would actually include Gavin Newsom in their number, are actually unwilling to say the things that they know to be true. There are various points where they will admit things that are true, such as when Newsom would go on with Charlie Kirk and say that, yes, it's unfair for men to beat girls in sports and that kind of thing. But does he actually put it into practice? No, because then he would get backlash from their crazy, insane base. When it comes to the reaction to what Israel just did, you see the tweets put out, the statements put out by Chris Murphy, by Jack Reed and the like, people
Tim
who are
Kaine.
generally lauded as being centrist within the Democratic coalition. But the only one who's actually willing to support Israel is John Fetterman, who's way out there, on the fringes now, basically, of his own party. Now, personally, I think the Democratic Party would be very smart to embrace John Fetterman and to basically say, this is a guy who represents what we can offer the people. He's someone who we could actually run and be competitive at, the national conversation, or at least someone who espouses his ideology. Instead, what do? They go back and again and again and again to the well of these idiotic ideas. And Tim Walz, by the way, all the China stuff related to Tim Walz during the campaign, I was someone who was like, well, maybe he went to China a couple times. He did these things. That's the kind of thing that you might not know about being negative when you got into politics in the future. Maybe let's be generous or gracious about the possibility that he was doing it in a way that was not, duplicitous. I'm on the completely opposite side now. I'm sorry. I mean, if you're going out there saying, oh, the moral authority in the world is definitely the People's Republic of China right now. What is wrong with your head? Check your brain, man. I mean, this is absurd. It's one thing to say, well, I wish we could build trains as fast as them, but it's like, this is absurd. Moral authority? What are you talking about? And this is the kind of thing that we're going to see consistently, I think, from this Democratic Party. I think that they are in the wilderness now. They do not know what they are about. They have not adjusted to their new coalition. And until they figure that thing out, they are going to continue to lose. And the situation that we saw this week in Los Angeles, the situation that we've seen in terms of their reaction to ICE and to enforcement of our laws, it's only going to continue to contribute to the idea that blue states and blue cities are places that people go to live if they enjoy chaos and getting small businesses burned down.
Speaking of just the fecklessness of the Democrats, 24 hours ago, everybody was looking at Alex Padilla, and the first question they were asking is, who the heck is Alex Padilla? And
senior senator from California.
And a day later, nobody's talking about him, right? I mean, the Democrats are trying to make it a thing. They're trying to make it a story.
About that, I would encourage again your listeners to check out on X on the Everything app that the footage of the other angle that I think is actually really important to see if you want to understand what was actually going on there, which is that a man without any kind of indication of his role, without any announcement of his capacity or the fact that he's a senator, just starts barreling towards the DHS secretary while she is speaking. Not even when she's in the question period, not when, she's opened things up to the floor, nothing like that. He interrupts the press conference, starts barreling toward her, and it takes a solid, 10, 15 seconds before he even announces who he is. The Secret Service reacted in a completely appropriate way.
Exactly. Correct.
We're in a scenario where ICE agents are being doxxed. The president had two serious assassination attempts against him. cabinet members are being threatened all the time. They reacted appropriately, and it's absurd that a senator would act like that. He should have announced himself from the get-go. He should have waited for the question and answer period, and he should have simply, asked for an appointment, asked for a meeting. But he didn't want to do that because he wanted the theatrics, and he's fundraising off of it already.
Chuck Schumer had a book release a couple of months ago that got scuttled because the anti-Semitic part of his base wouldn't have any of it. But he was on stage in a book event, and an anti-Semite started to rush the stage. And he was absolutely horse-collared, thrown to the ground, and hauled out of there, as he should have been.
As he should have been. I mean,
Yes.
I'm sorry. You don't have the right to bum rush the stage when the
Absolutely right.
talking. It's just absurd. And any Democrat who wanted to turn this into some look, they love this scene. As Guy Benson, our mutual friend, has pointed out, they want nothing more than to be put in the handcuffs and then use it to fundraise. And obviously you want to avoid that, and obviously, in this circumstance you wanted to avoid that. But the point is, it's completely logical why they behaved the way that they did, especially in this current climate.
Absolutely. Ben Dominich of The Spectator, always great content. Thank you very much. We will talk to you next week with Hugh. We'll miss these conversations. I want to just remind you real quick about another one of our sponsors, the American Legislative Exchange Council. They are still bird-dogging the Senate to pass the big, beautiful bill. They are still trying to make sure they work with all of the state legislatures to make sure that good policy comes through. You can go to alec.org/Hugh. That's, let me make sure I got that right. I think I got that right. alec.org/Hugh, yes. New Hampshire just came up with a brand new piece of legislation that was signed by Governor Kelly Ayotte to make it the 18th state in the union to do school choice. Support ALEC. They support us. They support your values at state legislatures all over the country. alec.org/Hugh. A good friend of the program, probably has not gotten a whole lot of sleep in the last 24 hours or so. Eli Lake is a columnist for the Free Press and is also the host of Breaking History, a great new podcast. Breaking History is probably a must-listen podcast over the next couple of weeks, especially with what's going on in the Middle East. Welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show, Eli.
Great to be here, Dwayne. Very, very, we're living through historic times.
We are indeed. Let's walk through it. There's so many different phases to unpack here. I want to start with the initial raid or the initial attack by Israel on Iran. The scope, the audacious nature of it, how ambitious it was, the success of it, and then we'll talk about American involvement, and then we'll talk about the Iranians' response thus far, and then we'll kind of see where we go and talk about the politics of it. But first, just your overall reactions of the series of strikes in the sequence of the strikes that Israel did in Iran.
Well, it goes back to the Bible, doesn't it? Don't mess with the Jews.
Yes.
to
sum it up, yes.
Every generation, I guess, the anti-Semites need to learn this lesson. But, wow. It was apparently Mossad. There were some commandos on the ground. They built a drone factory and then figured out how to use these drones and set them off. And apparently that was one of the ways in which, though, I think the information might be changing, so we're getting it in, but the main enrichment facility in Natanz looks to be taken offline. It looks like most of the senior commanders of Iran's military and Revolutionary Guard Corps have been eliminated. If you think about the incredible intelligence that would have required, it's extraordinary. It's just extraordinary, Dwayne. This has been, I think, an attack that I would date back in terms of the planning, probably to 2002, when someone who's no longer with us named Meir Dagan takes over the Mossad and makes it so that the focus of the Mossad is now going to be Iran. And it took a generation, more than a generation, for the Israelis to basically develop the network so that country is now wired. And I think it's extraordinary. I think it's more than bluster when the president says you can still negotiate, because there is a very important facility called Fordo, which has not been hit, and the supreme leader is still alive. So there's still something maybe for the Iranians to fight for. But what a demonstration this is. The Israeli jets were apparently refueling over Iranian skies. Can you believe that? A refueling operation over Iran. Incredible.
They certainly were doing it over Syria as well, and I thought that was an impossible feat. You couldn't have even written that into a script just a few months ago. Okay, so let's talk about the American involvement here thus far, and specifically Donald Trump, because I absolutely give Israel full marks for the planning and the execution. It could not have gone realistically any better than you could have hoped to expect in the first wave. There's still lots of work to do. There, as you said, Fordo. I'm hearing unconfirmed reports that maybe there's some strikes going on around Fordo. We heard that Isfahan was struck this morning earlier. So there's still lots of work to do. And yes, I think Khamenei's head's got to be on a swivel right now, because I'm not sure he's going to make it through the weekend. But that said, as much planning, as much execution, you cannot say that this raid, killing that many generals, taking out the scientists, it would not have been that precise and that successful were it not for the head fake that Donald Trump pulled this week. Would you agree with it? If so, explain that head fake.
Well, okay, so the story is, and I have to acknowledge here that I thought it was too good to be true at first. I just thought, that's so great, better check. But it looks like it is true, which is that Trump in the last week or so was feigning opposition to the Israeli strikes and pressing this next meeting in Oman in order to wrong foot the Iranians so they wouldn't be expecting the strikes. So it was as a surprise attack, so to speak. And then you saw, his response, because remember, the only thing we had last night was Marco Rubio. And Marco Rubio's statement, I think, was supportive. Well, are we going to go to the break now? But
yeah. Hang on to that thought. We'll pick up on the other side of the break with Eli Lake of the Free Press and Breaking History podcast. Eli is a professional broadcaster. He knows what a break is. Rejoined by Eli Lake of the Free Press and the Breaking History podcast. Eli, just two bits of two leaders of the West that are saving the West from ultimate destruction by denying terrorists a nuclear weapon. Benjamin Netanyahu, addressing the Iranian people directly in a video released Friday night, said, urge citizens to stand up and let your voices be heard, saying Israel's fight is not against them but against the Iranian government. More is on the way. The regime does not know what hit them or what will hit them. It has never been weaker, Netanyahu said. To CNN's Dana Bash this morning, Donald Trump called her cell phone and said a couple of things. He said, I gave them 60 days, and it's day 61. My red lines actually have a line. They have an edge. And then he told Dana Bash that when she asked, are you still going to try to negotiate? Donald Trump said, well, all the hardliners we would negotiate with are dead. And she says, does that mean Israel took them out? And he says, well, they didn't die of COVID. Eli Lake, I'm telling you, I like what I'm seeing trolling all the way around.
God tier trolling from our president. That is, I'm sorry. We can have this conversation like it was 10 years ago, like, oh, it's not very presidential. We've crossed the Rubicon. Sorry, nobody does it better. That's just, tip of the hat. That's why he's the GOAT.
How is history going to regard Donald Trump and his involvement in this era? I know the media hates him. I know the Democrats hate him. I know never Trumpers hate him. I get all that. Some of them are so far out there, it's beyond where the buses run. I get it. They're not coming back. How is history going to view Donald Trump in how he handled this affair?
We should not succumb to excessive pride or hubris. We don't know how certain things are going to work out. but he is certainly a consequential president. And what we do know is that no Democratic president would have gone along with this with Israel. And Trump made that decision. He should be proud of it. I think this could be potentially the beginning of a total strategic realignment in the Middle East.
Yep.
And, I do think that this regime is in a lot of trouble. That's the message from Netanyahu. We have been seeing, really for the past 20 years, the Iranian people have made it very clear they do not want to be ruled by a corrupt, fanatic group of kidnappers and terrorists. And this is an opportunity. He's absolutely right. The regime is at their weakest. The attacks will probably keep coming. And I do think that Trump is sincere when he says, we can negotiate the rest of this if you want. But I also think that it's pretty clear the Iranians are not going to go for that. And Trump has made it clear, all right, well then, more pain. I will point something out, and I'm taking this from somebody named Will Chamberlain on Twitter who made this observation.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very good one. The Iranians have launched their counterattack. I think they've wounded 4 people in Tel Aviv, random civilians. The Israeli strike took out Iran's general command, their top leaders in their military, their top nuclear scientists, and their most important uranium enrichment, not to mention all of these other missile facilities. The Iranian strategy at this point is pray and spray. They have ballistic missiles. They can launch a barrage. Israel's missile defense cannot take out all of them. But that's it. That's pretty much what they can do in terms of conventional military. We'll see if they have the wherewithal to unleash some sort of terror wave. That's always a possibility. The Iranians are, sadly, the Henry Ford of modern Islamic terrorism. But the Israelis have just utterly shown their military dominance at this point. And that sends a message to everybody else in the region. Who is the strong horse and who is the paper tiger? I think we have the answer to that question now.
We saw in the opening wave of the attack launched by Israel, Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia issued a statement saying, well, this is awful. This is terrible. We stand with our brothers in Iran. And he gave all this lip service to that.
I think that's the foreign ministry.
But while all that was going on, when Iran sent the 100 drones on their way over to Israel, do you know where the majority of those drones got shot down? Over Saudi Arabian airspace. Over Saudi Arabian airspace, in Jordan as well, but a lot of it was in Saudi Arabian airspace. So he's kind of, it's classic MBS, right? I mean, he's kind of dancing both sides of the line, but he's got to recognize where the strong horse is.
The foreign ministry gave the boilerplate, and I think MBS is 100% in Israel's corner on this.
I think he is too.
And I think that you're going to see. I mean, for years we were told the key to unlocking the Saudi participation in the Abraham Accords was going to be a Palestinian state. I would say the key is this attack right here.
Absolutely.
Israel is proving
I couldn't agree more.
You
take the single unifying threat to everybody in the Middle East. You take that piece off the puzzle, and they're no longer the regional hegemon, and Israel is willing to do a partnership, an economic partnership. Saudi's going to take that deal in a second, right?
Yep. No,
I think so
that's
too.
Right.
Eli Lake of the Free Press and the Breaking History podcast. Must listen. Go check out @Eli Lake on X for more with all the momentous news of the week. I can't even imagine what Joe's got in store for us. Joe, what do you have?
Dwayne, coming to you from Los Angeles, California, where everything bad starts. I'm sure you've caught on to the trend, and one that's going global. Anything is justified if your cause is noble, a spirit that's as old as man and all of mankind's movements, one that shaped the modern world and brought us some improvements. But what has lasted just as long and gives debate its fizz, who gets to designate just what a noble movement is? And so we've made up systems in history, awareness, designed to make decisions with justice and with fairness. If laws are seen as wicked, as press reports reveal them, we've only got two options: enforce them or repeal them. We can't just overlook them or look the other way. That, my friends, is anarchy and deadly to fair play. Chop down all of England's trees, a saintly man once said, and build yourself a coffin, for justice will be dead. So make your case for amnesty, make your case for walls. Another faction rises, another faction falls. But don't throw bricks at passing cars or burn the city flat. I think we can agree there's no nobility in that. That's Mostly Peaceful by Tarzana Joe.
Mostly, I was hoping it was Mostly Peaceful. That's the title, isn't it? Is that already posted over at tarzanajoe.com? It is. Joe, thank you very much for doing that. If you want to hire Joe, verse for hire, go to tarzanajoe.com, click on the I Want a Poem button, or you can email him at tarzanajoe@reagan.com. tarzanajoe@reagan.com. Look, I'm closing out. It's Father's Day this weekend. Obviously, prayers for Israel, prayers for that God's hand of providence remains on the nation-state of Israel and the United States forces there in their evolving campaign against Iran. I want to also appeal to all the fathers out there. Look, there's lots of dads that get a lot of things for Father's Day that they don't need. You want to do something to actually do a tribute to Dad? Send a kid to camp in Dad's name. Go to the top of the HughHewitt.com page. There's a banner for Angel Tree at the top. Let it load. Click on the Angel Tree banner. Or you can call 888-206-2764. 888-206-2764. A lot of these kids, their dads are in prison. And you can be the surrogate dad. You can maybe your dad was the best dad ever and sent you to camp. And you could return that favor by sending a kid to camp in Dad's name. I encourage you to do so. Lots of you have. I know lots more of you can. And it's the right thing to do. It gives these kids a chance. 888-206-2764 or go to HughHewitt.com and click on the Angel Tree banner. Dwayne in for Hugh. Hugh is back with Dr. Larry Arnn for the Hillsdale Dialogue at the top of the hour. And then he's back for real on Monday. And you know you're not going to want to miss that.